Oh, by the way, this is Scott, so if you're doing the peer evaluation or the refutation.
Hello everyone, my name is Scott Carmack, and hopefully I'll be brief so I can get you out of here. My topic, I thought it would be a good idea to talk about the presidential election since we're coming up on that. And my main claim regarding the presidential election system is that under the current system, your vote rarely impacts the outcome of the election. Now, in case you didn't pay attention in government class or you've just forgotten, the way that this works is there's an electoral college system, and so we don't actually vote in a direct election form. It's a form of indirect election where when you're actually voting, it only goes up to the state level. Now, at the state level, all the votes are counted, and whichever way the state won, every single vote, the state is allocated a certain number of electoral votes, and whichever side won the state gets every single one of those votes. So basically, if you went and voted Democrat or for Obama, then if the Republicans won that state, your vote doesn't actually go towards Obama at all. It only gets counted from the state level. So, for example, California has 55 electoral votes. So if the Republicans win California, then the Republican candidate gets all 55 votes. Now, after that background, the way that I'm going to sort of prove this to you, I suppose, is by 4 main claims. Basically, my first claim would be that who wins each state is mostly determined by party loyalty and is not really variant at all. My second claim is that, in theory, an elector, or one of the electoral votes, the electoral votes, see how there are 55 for California, there are actually 55 electors. So, so, in essence, you're voting for 55 people to vote a certain way. So in theory, the elector can vote either way he chooses. My third point is that if you voted for the party that lost the state, like I said earlier, your vote in essence becomes wasted. And my fourth point is that it is possible for the Electoral College to not reflect the popular vote. That is to say, a president could win, or a candidate could win the presidency even though he did not receive the majority vote of the people. Now, my first claim, who wins each state, is for the most part determined by state loyalty and doesn't often change. As I looked through the National Archives and other sources, I found that, for example, California has been won by the Democratic Party for the last 20 years if you include the upcoming elections polls, which is the last 6 straight elections, which the polls show that the Democratic Party doesn't even have below a 50% voting rate in the state. So, if you're a Republican, what are you going to do? If you vote Republican, you don't really have a very high chance of your vote actually getting counted. Your vote really only matters if you're in what political jargon is calling a swing state. So, a swing state would be one that is undecided on the polls, or one that could go either way. This is where candidates usually spend most of their time campaigning. And so swing states in the past 60 years have only ranged from 8 to 19 of the 50 states. So at most only 38% and at least only 16%. So you're not very likely to be in a position where your vote can really make any sort of definitive difference unless you live in one of those states. Now, my second point, in theory, an elector can vote either way that they choose. There are methods that deter this, however, they're not very effective. Only 24 of the states do actually have laws that punish electors for being unfaithful to the party that they were elected to elect. And many of those 24 only, like, obviously they can only punish them after the fact, but many of them do not void the vote after it's been given. So in essence, they don't actually affect it at all. Despite this, however, faithless electors have not yet changed a presidential outcome, but it does still give the possibility, or it does still take the vote out of your hands, which is the problem. However, this point more so supports my third claim, where as the losing party, your vote in essence becomes wasted. Because faithless electors, there hasn't ever been a outcome, or a changing outcome by a faithless elector. If you're a Republican, say in California, and the Democrats win, there is not a very high chance that an elector will vote your way, due to the all or nothing nature of the system. So obviously, like I said before, even if you vote for that candidate and your party loses the state, it doesn't matter. Now, my final point, it is possible for the Electoral College to not reflect the popular vote, which has happened with 14 of the presidents that we've had, and 17 times altogether, which is 43 of the presidents that we've had, and 30% of all elections we've ever had in the country. Such as you're obviously familiar with the 2000 election where Al Gore won the popular vote, but George W. Bush won the Electoral College, and so he won the presidency. So, to conclude, since my time is up, under the current presidential election system, the Electoral College, your vote rarely impacts the outcome because of the 4 points that I just described to you. Most importantly, that it does not reflect the popular vote nearly as well as it should. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go quickly because I'm sure everybody's anxious. I think that your proposition needs to be a little bit sharper. I got the general idea of what you're talking about. At the end of the speech, it seemed clearer with the point that you were trying to make. But you need to have a way of highlighting that main proposition so we know that that is, in fact, the point that you're trying to make. The supporting claims, I thought that they were partially outlined. They were a lot clearer. The basic ideas of the Electoral College are explained, but it takes you a long time to do that. And for the first half of the speech, you're just going through background and previewing what the contents are. It's not until the last 3 minutes of the speech that you actually start developing the argument. Internal signposting is relatively clear. You've got a couple of examples and some hypotheticals that you're talking about. There's some factual data about faithless electors. You need to give us a source citation on that. There's some statistical information about the number of elections where the votes have been, the popular vote and the electoral vote have been different. You don't really give us a source citation on that. I don't doubt that they're basically true because they should be factual data, but you still need to cite where that information comes from. I'm not sure there's a lot of controversy in what you're talking about, except that I guess what if we took it to the point that being, Republicans in California should stay home and Democrats in Texas should stay home, and that's pretty much the way it goes. Maybe there's something that's going on there. The notion that there are swing states, I think there's a potential argument that you could be developing a little bit more where there's going to be some more controversy, but what that argument would be, you and I would have to talk about a little bit more. I know that the rest of the crowd here doesn't really want to hear me go into that in a great deal of detail. The presentation, I think, is pretty effective, and like I said, I thought you had a clearer summary and exit statement than you had at the beginning of the speech. All right, thank you all for your patience tonight. You have a good evening, and we'll see you next Monday. Be careful out there in the weather.